Hey everybody, this is Silverspook, and this is the Silverspook video about Civil War. Is it a movie or is it real life? Is this a Hollywood production or is this what is happening right now? So we will talk today about possible implosion in the United States, as well as the film by Alex Garland, creator of the TV show Devs, 28 Days Later, I'm pretty sure. Sunshine. Her is a recent film he put out, and several others. Can't remember all of them. I did a video about Devs actually sometime last year. That's a TV show. Silicon Valley, very Matrix esque or trippy cyber sci-fi head trip TV show. But anyways, Civil War though, that's the latest movie, and it just released, I believe. It just came out in theaters, if I'm not mistaken. I think you can check it out. I think it said it was trending #1 movie in the U.S. I don't know if that's a box office number or that was just like Alex Garland tweeting about how awesome he is, or it was, or that's just the production company's marketing. But it is a movie that's out. So, anyways, um, if you don't know anything about it, you can, you can check out the trailer. And I don't want to. I mean, it's pretty obvious what it's about, right? But legit, in case you're wondering, it is by A24. It is an action slash war movie. You can watch it. You can watch it right now. It stars Wagner Moura, Kirsten Dunst, Kaylee Spiney, Jesse Plemons, Nick Offerman, Steve McKinley. Nick is also in Devs, and obviously Parks and Rec. Um, and there's a few reasons why I wanted to pick up on this, but let's just look at let's go and get the basic plot there. Civil War is a 2024 dystopian film written and directed by Alex Garland. It follows a team of journalists traveling across the U.S. during a civil war, which has engulfed the nation. The ensemble cast includes Kirsten Dunst. Yeah, so it premiered at South by Southwest on March 14th. It was released in the U.S. and the U.K. recently. Yeah. So in the Civil War movie, a Civil War. Here's a cover there. A civil war has erupted between the authoritarian United States government and various regional factions. The president, who is serving a third term, claims that victory is close at hand. Renowned, get that picture up a little bit higher. Renowned war photographer Lee Smith saves aspiring photojournalist Jesse from a suicide bombing in Brooklyn. Lee and her colleague Joel intend to travel to Washington, D.C. to interview and photograph the president before the city falls. Lee's mentor, Sammy, asked to accompany them as far as Charlottesville, where Western forces, the WF of Texas and California, are assembling. Despite Lee's hesitancy, and Joel agree. Unbeknownst to Lee, Jesse convinces Joel. Anyway, I'm not going to give you we don't need the whole plot, but you kind of like get the basic setup. So the U.S. has split into Western forces, that is Texas and California. And there's the incumbent president is basically like decided that there won't be elections, or that's it for the elections. We're just we're gonna have a different system now. And after departing the city, the group stops at a rural gas station. Actually, I don't want that. I want the synopsis. I don't really want all of that. But you get the basic idea. So it's a movie that it's a movie that takes a lot of worries and scenarios, and it's projecting. I mean, I don't actually know, to be honest, what Alex Garland thought he was gonna do with this. Um, but there was a Civil War plays both sides. Civil War is a big, loud, visual, arresting, but politics are confused and potentially radicalizing. The reason why, one of the reasons, I mean, I guess I'm gonna go mask off, not mask off. I'm gonna be more direct earlier in, but this is actually an interesting image because you can see the American flag is not the flag it used to be. Also, this is Wired, and it's trying to paywall me away from this to disrupt my stream intentionally, personally targeting me, Silver Spook, by popping up demands to pay them money to access this content. The United States has fallen. It's not a free country. It costs $3 to get information now. That's not free. That's how you know it's the end of U.S. democracy. Anyway, so Civil War plays both sides. It's big, loud, visually arresting, where the politics are confused and potentially radicalizing. One of the reasons why I wanted to focus on this is because a lot of the real world United States mainstream media, which is the U.S. mainstream, ruling class, powers that be opinion on things, they really are worried about this movie, or they're expressing a lot of concern about it. Like it wasn't just Wired. It was Wired one. Where was the other one? How do both sides of Civil War? How do I And his new film, Alex Garland, seems to be trying to have it both ways, using our dire politics as bit as buzzy IP while tap dancing around conversations that might get him in trouble. There are a lot of people that are upset about this. We're looking at all of the U.S. Imperial. We're looking at the U.S. Trumpets of note. No, I want the Civil War. I mean, one of the reasons why is because things like this, right? Beware prophecies of civil war. This is an article from a couple of years ago. The idea that such a catastrophe is unavoidable in America is inflammatory and corrosive. So, and the thing is, like, if this is an Atlantic article. If your country, if your organization, if your society is not having a problem, right? In particular, in places like the West, if you are not having a problem, right? There isn't a need to in very expensive, because when you're writing an article in a paper like this, these are like at the front. These are like millions of dollars worth of eyeballs will be looking at these things, right? These are like the conversations will be led. I mean, it's not necessarily because these are corporate media is great, but they will push the minds and the discussions of your country and your the and all your vassals too. Obviously, the Western world will move in the direction of like major corporate media, whether you like it or not. It's just a fact of how that operates. I mean, how it, at least for the recent history and up until now, that's how it operates. So if there isn't a problem, right? If the threat, if the potentiality of the collapse of the United States or civil war breaking out in the United States is very, very unlikely, right? Like, just as another example, the Atlantic doesn't put stories on the front page of the threat of giant frogs eating people in America, right? They don't put that on the front because that's what does that just it's irrelevant. That's that, of course, like in some random universe because of the Fallout forced evolutionary virus or radioactivity or super COVID that suddenly invades the H5N1 super COVID that invades the pituitary glands of amphibians, causing mega hypertrophy, and so you have giant 20-foot tall frogs eating people. Yeah, that's possible, I guess. Right? Like, there's no stories of the beware that there's no stories of beware the prophecies of Sharknadoes, right? I mean, that's a movie, Sharknado, right? But there's no articles in the front page about we have to like disregard claims of killer great whites being cycloned into your front yard because they don't waste millions of dollars, right, and prime mental real estate of corporate media front pages with that stuff because there isn't a threat. The only reason why they have to say things like this is because the United States is close to a civil war. It's like, otherwise they wouldn't have to even talk about it, right? They don't. The U.S. The U.S. corporate media, Western corporate media, they don't talk about the threat of Canada invading Mexico or Mexico. I don't know. They don't talk about the threat of I don't know, some mega tsunami, wiping off the entire west coast of the United States or something, because there's a potentiality of a large tsunami, but they don't. It's a waste of time. They don't routinely talk about the threat of a super volcano. I mean, occasionally they do, or a disaster movie, but they're not. It's not like, oh, we need to really prepare for that super volcano. Even though, like, technically, one could go off at any time. But that's not. They're not going to waste the front page with that kind of stuff, right? But there are many discussions of civil war in the United States, and when it comes from the Atlantic, the New York Times, mainstream corporate media, it's always going to be, don't worry about it. There isn't any. It's nonsense. But also the end of our democracy if you don't vote blue. It's kind of, but it's simultaneously schizophrenic. It's multi-personality disorder depending on what they want to sell at that moment, right? It's kind of like China is simultaneously, eons behind the West and about to collapse, and simultaneously light years ahead of the U.S. and the West and about to take over, right? The red and yellow star flags and hammer and sickle tanks are gonna land in California and New York any second now, right? And that's why we have to ban TikTok. But at the same time, China is like falling apart, on the brink of collapse, not even close to us, and they're just so weak in the world. But also they're about to take over the entire global economy, and leaving the U.S. like a minuscule, like amoeba compared to their titan economic, technological, political, and military strength. So simultaneously there is no civil war, right? But then also it's kind of weird, right? Because but if any second now, the civil war is going to happen after Donald Trump gets elected. And so also, what's up, Victor? So I think that's it's an interesting dichotomy. But anyway, so the Civil War movie though, is the threat real, right? And I mean, the honest truth is, like, nobody, you can't really, it's hard to really gauge exactly what like a percentage. You can't give a C3PO, the odds of U.S. Civil War in the next 5 years is, 1.6 to 1. that would make it over 100% probability. It's a 160% probability of civil war. So that means there's a 100% chance of civil war, and then there's about, you have a 50-50 chance of 2 civil wars in the next 5 years. That's the probability. Okay. So there you go. You got it. Now you don't have to watch the rest of the video. It is real life, no, but I'm joking. We don't have the exact number, right? But certainly the United States has many problems that are getting worse. Um, and the the movie itself is, again, what I was getting to is that the movie itself is seen as a danger to the United States. There was an article I was reading by multiple Western ruling class media. Trying to see if I can find them. With no one worth sharing. Are you surprised? Civil War, a striking but muddled state of disunion. Civil War and its terrifying premonition of American. Premonition. Going to Alex Garland's astonishing new film, I expected to be irritated by the implausibility of its premise. I'm not talking about the idea that America could dissolve into vicious internecine armed conflict. That seems possible, but if not probable. 43% of Americans in 2022 said they thought a civil war within the next decade was at least somewhat likely. I won't be surprised if political violence spikes after the upcoming election and eventually spirals out of control. I'm pretty confident, however, that if the sort of war Garland depicts ever actually broke out in this beleaguered nation, California and Texas wouldn't be on the same side. Civil War has received plenty of adulatory reviews, but Garland has also been widely criticized for eliding the ideological forces driving America's fracturing. He's repeatedly spoken about the dangers of polarization and a bit of a cop-out, given that only one American political party has leaders who lionize violence. So a lot of the obviously liberal media is talking about. It's interesting is that the liberal media will say Alex Garland is not being fair because only one party is destroying the United States and is bad, and that's obviously the Democrats. I wonder what Not that I like looking at Fox News, but movie. So what is Fox News? What happened if a real civil war broke out based on the new movie? Civil War stars deny media assumptions that the film's fascist. So the Fox News, I'm sure, is also going to be saying that Civil War. Well, they might actually celebrate it. Some of them. The conservatives in the U.S. will some of them will celebrate it. Some of them will say it's unfair because it paints the Donald Trump character in a bad light when it's the Democrats that are the bad democracy destroying group, right? Experts discuss unlikelihood of actual, but you see, Fox is also corporate media, so they're also saying it's unlikely, right? It's unlikely that the Civil War could break out. But also it's about to happen. So here, buy some MREs, and here, buy some water purification tablets, and here, build your fallout shelter. But it's unlikely it's gonna happen. But also prepare for it because it's about to happen. This is the Western cognitive dissonance of living in a collapsing crap hole, multi-thousand-year failed experiment. Anyways, online conversations around potential conflict in the U.S. have gone mainstream. About the Civil War, with Americans questioning probability of political upheaval and how they could survive the dire unlikely event. Garland has depicted virus-caused pandemic, uncontrollable AI. The virus pandemic was 28 days later. Uncontrolled AI was, which one was that? Ex Machina? Yeah. Societal warfare in his films sees these issues as a reflection of current realities rather than predictions. Civil War cast told the hosts it's a love letter to journalism. 824 details a violent conflict in near future America following a secession of 19 states, although it's not made clear in the plot why they're fighting, and explicitly doesn't have a red versus blue states framework. The original Civil War in 1861 had caused 620,000 deaths between the Confederates and the Union, obviously. Unlike this 1861 Civil War. A hypothetical Civil War of the future would not see split into two opposing zones like Republican and Democrat, nor would it fall into roving bands. This is based on this experts input. The future would not see it split into two opposing zones like Republican and Democrat, nor roving bands of anarchists and the like. In contrast, I think various paramilitary groups and research groups, both those that are known as well as those that are secret, will come out, take over local or regional pieces of territory, and assert themselves as medieval lords, propped up by an advanced military hardware that they may possess. This is while Shipkar believes that there is a higher probability of natural disaster occurring versus another civil war, he does not think the scenario is entirely impossible. In a civil war scenario, civilians must prepare to reduce casualties and maximize survival. Shipkar said the civilians should expect intentional blockage of water access and overwhelmed healthcare system. Americans should equip gloves, eye and ear protection. When in doubt, duck and cover. Like a nuclear apocalypse, right? When the 10 billion degree fireballs go up, and you're certain death is inevitable, just duck down under your George Foreman grill. Put your head in a fetal position between your legs and kiss your ass goodbye. No, just during nuclear apocalypse, be sure to buy the surplus solar eclipse visors to watch the phosphorus flash. At discount price, or no, at price gouged prices, so we can still make money under capitalism as the world, as your America ends. So remember, when the Civil War happens, protect your eyes. Make sure you have make sure you don't look directly into the gun muzzle flashes of the AR-15s and the Colt 1911s that are coming out. All the Civil War, retro 1800s cowboy pistols that are being fired. Just don't look directly into the flash, and you'll be fine. Make sure you have good ear protection. So make sure you're wearing your noise canceling headphones, listening to Lynyrd Skynyrd or the American anthem, any one of the 5 American anthems that have now been composed to represent each of the 5 separate Americas that have balkanized. And then make sure you have I think Fox News, they messed up though, because they said wear a mask, and I think that what you want to say is don't mask during the Civil War, because then you could be a sheeple who believes in medical science, right? Like on aerosolized viral pathogens being in the air. So actually, you gotta X that mask out, I think. The editor at Fox, you're supposed to be striking the word mask from every article and every publication, right? Because the masks don't exist in the world anymore, including at construction sites. Sturdy shoes protect windows and plywood, because we're not in a pandemic anymore. Sturdy shoes protect windows and plywood. Protect windows. Actually, it's kind of interesting. It's like this. So who is this person? Hold up. Who is this person? Ajit Shipakar. Indian wannabe Tulsi Gabbard / Sundar Pichai, being paid by the U.S. Empire to sling BS for it and pretend like it's not racist. Ajit Chipakar, a data analyst with Straits Research, noted pretend like Fox isn't. Noted to Fox News Digital that Director Garland has depicted so many Republican, Indian plutocrats that come over to the United States now. It's like, right, the guy who is the guy that just ran and lost, because the GOP is the white man party. He didn't get the memo. They like having a few of them in the background, but they're never gonna win anything significantly. Certainly not the president of the United States. Anyways. Ajit Chipakar, data analyst with Straits Research, noted to Fox News Digital that Director Garland has depicted the virus. Yeah, okay. So this is a data analyst So this is the Fox News analyst commentary, right? Is when you have a civil war, what you should do is protect your windows with the plywood. So big wood, right? Big lumber is making money from this movie. Protect your windows with plywood. Stack sand or soil outside your windows and walls to reduce blast fragmentation. So big sand and big bulldozing. You're gonna make big money, right? So the Koch and Warren Buffett, they're gonna sell a whole lot of cats, a whole lot of farming equipment for this. Everyone's gonna be putting giant mountains of. You're gonna see, like, when the archaeologists come back and unearth like the death of the United States from all the radioactive skulls with the Punisher decals on them, right? When everyone dies in the Civil War, they're gonna like, wow, we see that there was these native people like tens and hundreds of thousands of years ago, Native Americans who built these mounds. But then there's these other mounds, right? And they're gonna call them the second wave of mounds. The second wave of mounds that these the advanced indigenous civilizations that come after the multipolar world and the fall of the West and capitalism and imperialism. These super advanced indigenous people will come in and fusion artificial sun powered vehicles and like a flying Huawei BYD cars. They'll like land in what used to be Arkansas. Now it's indigenous territory, indigenous Federation of Nations, right? And they're gonna be like, wow, there was this time in the late 2020s where hundreds of thousands of these mounds were built, but they're not like Cahokia. They're not like indigenous actual advanced cities of civilization. There were these barbaric people that came to this place, Turtle Island, this North America, and they built mounds that had like red, white, and blue, like statues around them, and like Thomas Jefferson. They put like they stacked bags of sand, and we found samples of hydroxychloroquine and Joe Rogan's piss in the ocular cavities of the skulls, because apparently these people, they like putting horse tranquilizer and right-wing podcaster urine in their eye, right, to cure COVID. It was an interesting culture these people had in this place. They used to call it the United States of America, and the 50-pound sandbags didn't really stop the nuka blasts, and they didn't really stop the roving fascist Adam Waffens and pro-Trump and pro-Biden militias from killing each other. They didn't really stop much, but it's interesting that they left all these mounds of they left these new soil and sand mounds as a kind of second. It's like, in the same way that London is like this strata upon strata of older buildings, during the Elizabethan period, and then you have like under Piccadilly Circus, you dig deep enough, you'll find the original Roman buildings, right? And so in the U.S. you can find like the red, white, and blue Joe Rogan's piss and Jordan Peterson's Jordan Peterson's phlegm, right? That was used as medicinal tonics, right, to cure the tuberculosis, measles, H5N1, now human to human transmitted, that kill everyone while they were shooting at each other with overpriced AR-15s. And the HIMARS, and Americans are shooting at each other with the Raytheon and Lockheed Martin missiles that couldn't get to Palestine because all U.S. shipping was blockaded in by Yemen and Russia and China. And so, so the Americans just started shooting at each other, all the missiles that were intended for Palestinians, Iraqis, Yemen. And that's how the death of the United States military-industrial complex made money at the end, was blowing themselves up. And so that would be really interesting for people to learn about. I think that would be really interesting for future, like 2200 anthropologists and archaeologists, right? Like Chinese and South American and indigenous people around the world, and African archaeologists who have since restabilized and built high quality infrastructure, solar and fusion, and 7G technology in over what used to be the United States, right? In the Indigenous Federation of Socialist, Algonquin, Blackfoot, Anishinaabe, Lakota, and other people states that used to be the U.S., right? When the U.S. settler colony, and then Europe has to figure its own stuff out. When the settler colony, like Israel, is dissolved, the U.S. settler colony. And that'll be really interesting for those people. I think there will be a lot of really interesting white papers written about the U.S. Civil War, the final U.S. Civil War, kind of like how the people still write, about the 1860s U.S. Civil War. Anyway, Civil War stars deny media assumptions that the film's fascist president was inspired by Trump. What I find interesting is like what people are, what Americans think, and what American media and all the upper crusts and the lower gutter, I guess, or the non-democracy of the United States has to say about what this film means, right? But it's not inspired by Trump. I mean, are you kidding me? Like whether you believe it or not, I mean, it's been everywhere that if Trump wins again, if Trump is allowed, there will never be another American election. I mean, liberal and even some conservative media have all said that, and like Trump has even he's said that himself, that he wanted to take America over. He's even said, I would like to be the Third Reich of America. He's tried. He's failed, but he tried. He has. So that's just disingenuous. Okay. But this is so the stars are saying this is not about Trump, so that they could sell some more Hollywood tickets to the 50% of America that's 100% ready for an attempt to resume, a full white settler colony where women are property, black people are property, and now the United States is a country for white people. That's where half of the country is, like a solid 40-50%. And it's I almost feel like it's going to be interesting, because some people in the United States would say some people in the US would say, to claim that the Civil War movie is not inspired by Trump is an insult to Trump and to real Americans, right? Because some Americans, I think, would say, right, and look at some of these imagery, some Americans, I think, would say that Civil War is a great movie because it represents a real emergence and a real resistance to the tyranny that is and the corruption in the United States, right? This is why a lot of times it's Fox News has less of a negative view of it, actually, and the liberal, like New York Times, Atlantic, and Wired. Those are three that had more critical viewpoints on it, right? Atlantic talk about beware the Civil War, beware the Civil War. It's not. It's muddled. It's confused, right? The Wired one said, Civil War is playing both sides, right? It's radicalizing. It's a big problem. It's loud and it's loud and arresting. It's entertaining, but its politics are confused, and it's dangerous. It's not helpful, right? It's going to radicalize people, and this is going to be very, very. This is going to lead to a bad path, right? And the Fox News is, hey, what would happen if it? What would happen though? What would happen if it broke out? Let's spitball it a little bit. Let's just spitball it. Well, I mean, if it happens, buy lots of sandbags. Get yourself some Liver King, raw milk full of H5N1. I'm sorry, full of alpha male testosterone. That's what cows produce. Thus spoketh the big dairy and big cattle, and get a whole lot of sandbags, get a whole lot of plywood, and get a whole lot of bulldozers to bulldoze soil in front of your house, and get a lot of guns, right? So from the fuck, so I think actually the way America is split is that one way in that they're splitting is the more conservative side is like, no, a civil war would be, maybe not, it would be a bit violent, but I mean, we're violent. We're violent people. We resist the tyranny. We fight against our forefathers. I'm not saying that like this is good. I'm just saying this is what the right wing of the United States, or the people will call themselves conservative, Republican, or whatever, true American, real Americans, people who speak in certain terminology about people who use DEI a lot as a scare term. They will say, we are resisting the tyranny of the Biden administration, the Democrats, the degeneracy or whatever. And they'd be like, a civil war would be a good thing, because a civil war is the only way that we can resist and cleanse the problems of the United States. Right? And those people would say, hey, the good guys in the Civil War are those Texas, or Alex Garland is confused. Like, Texas, California, what are you talking about? Like, I don't know. Like, the way he like, I'll just a quick aside. His map of the United States, I actually commented on it previously, but this is Alex Garland's map of the United States. Okay, so you have the loyalist states, right? You have the loyalist states is all in the center here. Actually, I'm gonna get a slightly higher resolution of that. So I think I actually quote tweeted this. So you have the loyalist states, right? That's all of the East Coast, New York, Connecticut. You got your, New Hampshire, all of New England, Maryland, right? DC, Virginia, all the way through the Rust Belt, Beltway, and then the Rust Belt, Chicago and Detroit, Michigan. You come on through. It kind of cuts through the center through Colorado. Was this Arkansas? No, sorry. Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada. Then you have Republic of California, Second Republic of Texas, and I think the Western forces like kind of include. So California breaks off, Texas breaks off, become like their own republics, but they're kind of allied in the Western forces, and the loyalists that go along with the U.S. current regime, right? Kind of make up that whole center. It's very strange. It is a very muddled. Like, what exactly is this map saying? I think Alex Garland has a lot of access to Hollywood production for some reason, but he has like his ideas are it's very like, I looked at my belly button and thought about it for 30 seconds and then I wrote it down, and to put it lightly, and it's like, it doesn't really make all that much sense. I mean, obviously you'd have like the more conservative half, it's not going to be. I really highly doubt we can divide like this. A lot of the states, like parts of California, have like very red areas in the rural areas, and then the suburbanite areas, and then you have like and then the cities, obviously, like places like Los Angeles, San Francisco, like the thing is, like Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York City, Chicago, and those would all be more closely aligned, right? Than the way it's split, where it's it's like the West versus the East. This is a misunderstanding of the political makeup of the United States on behalf of some British guy. But anyways, but I mean, it's fantasy, whatever. a Florida alliance, like, I mean, Florida and Texas are close, would be closely aligned. They're the Ron DeSantis and Ron DeSantis and the Texas leadership, the Bushes, the what's that guy? Not Marco Rubio, the other Cuban, ex-Cuban. Not his family was originally from there. Ted Cruz, right? Those people are all would be very closely aligned. So this anyway, whatever you think about it. Also, Hawaii is not part of the United States. Thus spoketh me, a native Hawaiian. Actually, legally under the United Nations, it is. Actually, U.S. is in violation of international law there, like they are in Palestine. But anyways, so back to this though. So the I think that a lot of Americans, like, and the conservative side, what this kind of shows you is that the conservative portions of the U.S. Are viewing, and obviously this is corporate media, so it's conservative upper portions of the U.S., but I think a lot of the lower ones also agree, will say that, like, a civil war is not bad. The problem with this movie is that it doesn't paint the rebels, the Confederates, right, resisting the United States in a positive enough light, right? Alex Garland is giving the Democratic Party kind of more Democrat tinged a faction too much of a good look. Alex is airbrushing Joe Biden and the Democrats in this movie, and he is making us look bad, but we are the good guys in this. Or the people that more resemble Trump, that are like more, they kind of like look more like, in terms of both of what they visually look like, what they their skin tones and their general aesthetic. They look like the Boogaloo Boys. They look like a lot of the the militias, the right militias. They look and they speak in Confederate language. And so those Americans that most look like us in the movie, you're painting them in a bad light. But actually, we want the Civil War, right? Or a civil war if it breaks out. Because, if you look at the difference, right? On the one side, Atlantic is like, civil war is a catastrophe, and it is, it is not only, it is avoidable, and we absolutely, it's avoidable, and we should avoid it. And the idea of civil war is inflammatory and corrosive, right? That's the Democrat liberal perspective, right? This is why the Democrats are they've always been historically, all the way back to the Romans, the British, the liberals have always been the more competent imperialists, because they tend to hold the empire together a bit better. It doesn't make them morally better. It just makes them more efficient at doing imperialism. But anyways, from their perspective, it's civil war is bad. It's very bad. Don't even talk about it, right? From the conservative perspective, civil war is the right wing, right in the Western, in the U.S. Overton window. The Civil War is it might happen. It might happen. I mean, if you're an outlet, if you're anyone in the U.S., you can't really say. I mean, even if you are Fox News, you can't really say it would be awesome if America balkanized, split into pieces, fractured, and started fighting itself. You can't really say that, right? Because it would be even a lot of Americans, would be like, hey, are you? Even the right wing would say you're anti-American, right? But if you kind of couch it as like, this might kind of happen, you're not, because the Atlantic is saying this is bad, don't even talk about it, right? And the right wing is saying, hey, let's talk about it. If it happened, we're not going to start it, you're going to start it. But if it happened, you've already started it, right? Joe Biden and the Democrats have started it by, revoking Trump's social media accounts, banning him from all kind of places, seizing lots of right-wing financial and technological information distribution, which they have. And so they'll say so when Biden or when the Democrats launched the Civil War against us, and then we fight back by rebelling against, when Texas and Florida and Arkansas and Arizona and or Arkansas and Mississippi and Missouri and Louisiana, right? When we make the new Confederacy resisting the Union, the corrupt, tyrannical U.S. Democratic Union, we will, this is what we will do, right? This is what we should do, right? So, so you can see that there is one side that really does kind of want that civil war, which, I mean, that means that that doesn't guarantee it's going to happen, but this also means that the probability, right? If we're talking about what are we talking about a movie, or are we talking about what's happening right now, right? Some people will say that we're already in World War III on a global scale because of all of the parties that are currently engaged in either proxy war, Cold War, hybrid war, and the hot war that is escalating and escalating. It's just the nuclear exchange isn't happening, right? But in the sense of the huge swaths of the planet, in some way fighting separate factions, right? U.S., NATO, West versus what they view as their enemies: Russia, Iran, China, SCO, BRICS, the multipolar, whatever way you divide it. Some people would argue, we're already there. It's not a full maximum. It's not maximum weapons being deployed, right? Arguably, the world has never stopped being at war, right? Certainly not World War II. Wars didn't end because there's always been conflicts that are based on the U.S. versus the Soviet Union plus China, and the third world, and historical colonies, right? So in that sense, the World War II, World War I and World War II is just a continual world war. It's just that the intensity has reduced, and the level of conflict in Europe reduced. Europe was just reduced to rubble, so there's not much left to fight. There wasn't much left to fight with in Europe because it was all, in ashes, right? But now there is fighting in Europe, right? In Ukraine, obviously, and then now it's expanding outside of Ukraine, right? In places, there's parts of Belarus that is, the Russians are sending nuclear weapons there. France is currently moving. Apparently, France and other Europeans, Italy, are talking about, we're going to directly get more involved with our soldiers in Ukraine. So, long story short, so where exactly the civil war, where exactly a war starts and ends, it is much more of a spectrum. It's much more gray and fuzzy, right? It's not a binary on-off light switch, right? Oh, now we're at war, now we're not. And so civil war also is also like that, right? It's not like at one moment there's no war, and then at the next moment there's civil war. So, some could argue I would say there has been a constant low scale shadow civil war that's been happening for the last many years, and there are many specific examples that one could cite that I frequently do. One of them was when Trump ordered hundreds of thousands of rounds of ammunition from forts and U.S. military outposts in Texas, in Florida, and across the United States. He ordered those, and also where they came from was Donald Trump friendly governors and Donald Trump friendly states. He ordered the ammunition into Washington, D.C. in 2020, and he was preparing the military to fire live ammunition at American citizens, specifically Black Lives Matter activists, when they were surrounding the White House, right? So Donald Trump was preparing a Hitler-like takeover of the United States. He did. And then there was a concerted effort by the people that run the Atlantic and run the New York Times, right? And the people that run the liberal portions of the West, right? And they said, you know what? We cannot allow Donald Trump to take over the United States at this time, because this would be catastrophic not because they cared about average Americans. Obviously, they don't. In case you didn't get that memo, well, you watch all of your healthcare, housing, and food, and infrastructure money go burning up, doing genocide in Palestine. They don't care about you. Okay, the 100 billion they just signed 100 billion for Taiwan, Ukraine, and Palestinian genocide this week. In case you didn't know that, and they said the liberal ruling class, we cannot allow Donald Trump to take over the United States because this will make America, it will make America's appearance in the world's to the rest of the world be so horrible. We will be overtly a authoritarian dictatorship. We'll be authoritarian. We'll have a literal strong man. We're claiming to be stopping and overthrowing authoritarian dictatorships around the world and installing democracy. And if our democracy falls, we will lose much of what remains of our credibility that we weaponize as soft power to get our actual authoritarian capitalist imperial control done. To maintain control and plunder of the world and stay in power, we need to not have a strong man in power because of what that would do to us. Also, we could have civil war in our country if Donald Trump were to do that. And we're in a world where Asia, Africa, non-white, historically colonized peoples, Asia, Africa, Central South America, ASEAN, the Pacific Island nations are the growing economic power. And if we show ourselves to be absolutely racist, right, in an 1800s level of way, which is what Donald Trump is going to do, if we have a Hitler in America, right, we're going to alienate, not that we're not racist, but if we have just the overt mask of Hitler running America, ending the democracy, we're going to alienate 96% of the world's economic growth and resources in the future. So the liberals made a decision, right? The liberal portions of the Dr. Strangelove Council, the liberal portions of the U.S. ruling class, the plutocracy, the billionaire class, etc., the neocons, neoliberals together, and the global, international elites, the ultra rich, they said we're gonna have our military countermand Donald Trump's orders. This is what happened, actually. The U.S. generals countermanded. There were some generals that were citing the one. When the January 6th happened, right? When this happened, there were U.S. government officials. There were representatives that were involved in it that backed Donald Trump. There were representatives. There were senators. There were active. In case you forgot, a attempted coup of the United States happened, and they technically couped the United States. The U.S. was temporarily overthrown. In a sense, they didn't have a functioning capital for at least some hours, right? Senators, representatives, and U.S. military officials. There were U.S. active duty. Like one of the people that were shot was an active duty Air Force or former Air Force. U.S. military personnel, right? There were Air Force, there were Marines, there were police, there were Army. All branches of the military were at this action, and this was just the formal action, right? And there were generals. They're not loud about it because it would be very dangerous to be a general actively calling for civil war. If you're a general, right? Like in Dr. Strangelove, there is a civil war in Dr. Strangelove. Speaking of that, in Dr. Strangelove, which is how I learned to stop worrying and love the bomb. I know I bring this up frequently nowadays, but it's a good. You should go watch it if you haven't. There is a general, right? He orders a United States military. His soldiers under his command are ordered to attack other U.S. military platoons that come for him, right? So a civil war is involved in this movie, right? But the thing is, if a U.S. general were to say, hey, you know what, it's time to start that would be a very, 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 very dangerous for them because they would be in they would be committing treason, etc. Donald Trump has also been obviously accused and attacked and legally litigated against for treason. Now, if you notice, Donald Trump has not been put away, right? Why? I mean, obviously, he's committed treason. It's very obvious, right? But why hasn't Donald Trump, if he has committed treason, and treason is a high crime deserving of like horrible, it's some very severe punishment, imprisonment, death, whatever. But Donald Trump hasn't. Why hasn't Donald Trump been? How many times has he been sued? How many times has he been legally attacked? Right? How many times? Like, I can't even count now. How many times has he been indicted, impeached? Right? They can't put Donald Trump away. Why can't they put Donald Trump away? Because the United States is very close to civil war. That's why. The United States is inches really from it. And arguably it's already in it. Like I said, right? Donald Trump ordered the United States military to attack the United States citizens. That is an act of civil war. That is an act of war that is would shatter the United States appearance of being a functioning non-failed state. That would have plunged. That could easily have plunged the United States deep into a chasm of total outright collapse, and also would have ended the U.S. democracy. Right? Half of the United States believes that Donald Trump won in 2020. That's just reality, right? Those people, they're not gone, even if you don't see them a lot. I mean, I don't like seeing them, obviously, because I don't particularly like racist, unhinged people who put Joe Rogan's piss in their eye. You know? I mean, you can do whatever you want with your eye, but, that's just like, that's terribly medically inaccurate. Also, you're giving a grifter tons of money. Or clean out their lungs with Windex like Donald Trump recommended. I mean, I don't think that's a very good idea. But the point is that, but people believe in that. Many Americans believe in that. Many of the pro-Trump people are even saying, hey, the genocide in Palestine is horrible. We need to stop wasting that money. I mean, some of them are more like, hey, I need money because my infrastructure and my healthcare and my housing is falling apart, which is true. Right? And that was part of why Donald Trump was able to win, being an idiotic, failed reality TV star, failed steak, failed university starter, failed businessman in general, just a failure generally, but still win because of how horrible the existing leadership of the United States, the establishment, is, right? And so Donald Trump's and Biden is doing genocide. Period. The Democrats are full genocide. Absolutely. The Democrats' argument is we only do one genocide. But right, you just see that with the trolley. This is the Democrats' argument is the trolley problem. What was that? It just came out. There's a one. The trolley problem is like the latest one was, if you vote Democrat, you're only driving the trolley over the Palestinians, right? If you vote Republican, you'll drive the trolley over gay people and Palestinians. You'll drive the trolley over trans people and the Palestinians, and some black people, right? And like that's like literally their argument. Like, we only do one genocide. So, number one, that's false, because I'm a Native Hawaiian under 99% Democrats, and you're doing Native Hawaiian genocide. So that's just false. Number two, now that you've admitted to genocide, right? So the thing is, the Donald Trump and some Republicans have a huge chance to win. They absolutely have a massive chance to win. They have a very good chance to win this election. Not that I care about U.S. elections particularly, but and the grievances of huge swaths. The grievances of huge swaths of the conservatives of the United States, right? Not all of them. Like, oh, DEI and wokeism is destroying America. I mean, that's not it. It's like, if anything, it's too many mediocre white people getting into too many jobs, like Joe Biden being in president, or that's causing the inefficiencies and incompetence. But it is true that there is the U.S. government and the U.S. ruling classes have not done enough for the average citizen. That is true, and that's how Donald Trump won, and that's how somebody like him or he will win again. And there's a good chance of that. Or if he doesn't win, I mean, that's why he has the level of support that he still has, despite all of these clear, clear, open and shut cases of treason, open and shut cases of, corruption and fraud and all kind of crimes, right? But it's just like the Democrats all know, well, we all do corruption and fraud and crimes too. One reason why Donald Trump is not in prison is because if you put him in prison, you'd have it's a slippery slope to putting every member of the United States political establishment and all business leaders in prison, or execute them all. And that's one reason why, because they're all, most of the Democrats are guilty of even more corruption than Donald Trump. This is the thing, right? He's like a small potato in New York, which is one of the most corrupt places on the planet Earth. That's why Donald Trump he has a Napoleon complex, in part because he doesn't even have the power and the money to get away with the level of crimes that people like Hillary Clinton and people like Joe Biden and everyone else has been able to. And the New York plutocratic elite, the global transnational elite that come to New York City and figure out how they can weaponize the SWIFT payment system some more. So Donald Trump, they can't take him out because he is the smaller of the club of this horrible corrupt system. So anyways, and so the people are still out for that, and and Donald Trump, as I said, ordered an attack on American citizens. That was countermanded by the liberal portions of the United States, because it would not because they cared about the citizens, not because they care about healthcare and housing or freedom or equality, human rights, not because Democrats care about Palestinians or black people or brown people or trans people or gay people, right? Or native people like myself, right? They did that because it would hurt their empire. It would hurt their power. That does actually harm all those people for their benefit. And Trump would be an incompetent Emperor Palpatine to run their empire. He has been, and that's the truth. And so that, what does that mean? So that means that the probability that, the Democrats are doing nothing to change that equation. They're only getting worse, right? They're only quadrupling or tripling down on the genocide. They're continuing to do nothing for the masses of American people. They pay lip service. They say, oh, well, Bernie Sanders or someone's going to give you $10. What did Biden say this year? Biden had that one. We're going to increase the size of, Biden says, we're gonna make your burgers bigger. Around the Super Bowl, he said, we're gonna make sure the French fries get bigger. We're gonna make sure the burgers get bigger. You know what's actually happened? The formerly 12-ounce Coca-Cola cans are now down to 10.5 and then down to 9.6. So everything's getting smaller, right? So but even if Biden made good on that promise of making your red dye filled, red dye and preservative filled, crappy junk food packages bigger, that's not even close to enough. Even if you make good on that, all the Medicare, all the healthcare, all the women's rights, abortion's gone under Democrats, right? Everything they've ever said is all absolutely, failed. And so, the probability that the Republicans, it's actually like, I think the Democrats aren't even trying to run anyone but Biden, right? They're not even trying, right? Like in the 2016 election, or in the 2020, they tried to run Bernie, right? Like the vibe was very different, because it's like, well, maybe we'll get a Bernie Sanders, or maybe we'll have something a little bit more left on. Maybe there'll be a slightly less violent trajectory to making things actually better for the masses of the population, and maybe, right? Not everybody believed that, right? But a good chunk of Americans believe that. I don't know. I forget the exact numbers, but it was like a good, maybe 50 or maybe a little more percent believed that there was some kind of future by the Bernie Sanders campaign and what that represented. By the time he got to, but by now it's like there isn't even an alternative. There's just gonna be Biden all the way. We're just gonna be Biden. I mean, obviously for me it's like, this is never, this to me it was always like, this will be, I mean, interesting. I don't put a lot of stock in it being a native Hawaiian illegally occupied by the United States empire in forced colonization under genocide by the United States. I mean, I don't put too much stake in that. But if Americans believe that that's what's going to help them out, okay. But now the United States and Joe Biden are like, it's they don't have I don't even know what they're doing now. There's no message at all. It's just kind of like don't be anti-Semitic, and by don't be anti-Semitic it means stop protesting at Columbia to stop genocide, right? There's like no program. There's no program. The United States has no hope. It has nothing. It's an absolute failure. The Democrats and liberals are absolute catastrophic failures. They can't even keep their own future. I used to say, the Ivy Leagues like Harvard, Princeton, and Yale, and all these schools. These are Emperor Palpatine training facilities. This is where they train future managers of planetary capitalist imperialist empire. And they're having this huge Palestine and these premier Yale is doing a solidarity protest with Columbia right now, and there's other ones that are growing. These are the Emperor Palpatine training facilities, and the future Emperor Palpatines are all saying, "Hey, let's side with the Ewoks and the rebellion." Right? They're saying like ceasefire against the Ewoks, right? And these are going to be the future managers of the empire, right? And so, I mean, obviously I don't want the empire, but I'm like, you're not very good at producing future managers in DC and Wall Street and in the future Lockheed Martin program. Half of this company I'm streaming from, they just had to fire like dozens of their programmers because they're saying stop supplying automated warfare, digital and data technology and AI to Israel, right? So, and if you don't have your tech, if you don't have your high tech people they manage all the missiles and all the drones and the modern warfare technology, you don't have those people, and they're all going, we have to side with the Ewoks, we have to side with the rebellion in the Star Wars metaphor, right? Then you've lost, you were big time going down the tubes, right? So so from the actual left, you have massive resentment, upset, anger, and uprising and revolts or protests, right? And then from the right, you also have and from the further right, you have massive upset and then there's a growing it's not a union between the Trump conservatives that solid 40%. It's not a union and a solidarity between them and like pro-Palestine coming from a left perspective, but the things they are saying do overlap. There are similar things that are being said, which one might call that like populist or something, in senses is what the population wants. It's kind of funny because they have like different words for what the population wants versus a democracy. Populism is when the population wants a thing and then I don't know what these West, nothing in the West makes any sense. This is a catastrophic barbarian nightmare failure that's full of disinformation. But there is a growing consensus that there is a consensus among the majority of Americans that there is the genocide of Palestine has to stop. That money has to be taken and given. The military industrial complex has to be rolled back, and that money has to go into people's actual needs, right? That's been there actually for some time now, but it's really getting very intense, and then nothing is being done, right? Nothing. The people who claim that the Civil War was avoidable and shouldn't be discussed are doing a very bad job of avoiding a civil war. It's almost like, do the liberals want a civil war? Because this is how you get one, right? Just keep on. It's part of it is kind of like, I don't know if they even can. Some people argue that the U.S. Western ruling elite, they don't even know how to change direction. They don't know how to pivot to anything. All they know how to do is move in one direction towards infinite wrong-headed, boneheaded attempts to control the world in the global financial and military sense, that they are incapable of, right? It was never right, but now they're incapable of it, and now they're also in that attempt to control the world by maintaining their premier planetary imperial bases. Like Palestine is very important because Palestine, the Palestinian Israeli occupation of Palestine is the most important imperial base, and if that falls, it's also a settler colony based on white supremacy, like the U.S. and Canada and Australia. And if that falls, it would be a massive blow to controlling. It's arguably the most important base. The most money and weapons goes there to maintaining U.S. International planetary control. Right? It's not necessarily like Israel isn't the only base in the world. Like obviously Taiwan is a base of U.S. imperialism. Ukraine, obviously, Hawaii, right? To a smaller scale, places like Guam, Japan is a vast, but they're very important centers where the biggest chunks of the money and the weapons go, and Israel is number one. So in attempting to maintain empire in an international sense, to control the entire planet's resources and labor and flows of capital, etc., and militarily dominate everyone, by maintaining Israel, right, they are causing their own civil war. So it's like by sending your weapons and your arms to Israel to crush Palestinians, right, that is going to start your own collapse, right? That's currently what we're watching. That's like you cannot unsee that, right? When you see $100 billion in 1 week, when everyone is running out of everything, food, people are like out on the streets, people are self-immolating because they're getting evicted at such high rates, people are self-immolating because like they've completely lost faith in the entire United States ability to do what the people need, right? And then you send $100 billion, right, out to kill little babies. Killing the little babies just makes it worse. I mean, like spending $100 billion somewhere else to chop down trees, or spending $100 billion somewhere else, even spending $100 billion somewhere else to, like, I don't know, construct a mine, or even, like build a road somewhere. Not that wouldn't be that bad. But if you're building a road in Palestine and your roads are falling apart in the U.S., that would already be bad enough. But it's not. They're not even doing anything useful with the roads. They're just killing little children, innocent children. So the United States, actually, I give the United States 70-80% chance of dying in a civil war. I mean, not everyone dying, but I mean, like, it falling into one in the next few years. Technically, I give it's 100% because the U.S. is already in a civil war, right? Every time Donald Trump is litigated against, that's actually part of a civil war, because Donald Trump, and again, it's a shadow civil war. It's civil wars don't, like, wars in the sense of, I mean, it's not as much shooting, but it is a cold civil war in the sense that there are two parties that are separately vying over control, that contest the entire legitimacy of the other side's existence, right? I mean, it's not like for example, like, I don't know, in Cuba or in Vietnam or in China, there are different officials. There are elections, right? And then people vote, and there's like Vietnam, there's like 85%. They basically vote within. There's one party, but even within the party, there are differences, and different individuals have different ideas of the tax that should be taken. Now it's these other systems, they have different ways of they have meritocratic ways of deciding who elevates themselves in the party, but there is, like, the people do have ways of influencing and making sure that the will of the masses in these other places, the non-Western places, I call them actual democracies, that their needs are being met. And a lot of it has to do with, you have to prove over time through the Communist Party and through the serving the people over many years. So you cannot simply get elected into office, and that's just a better functioning system for actually doing for rooting out corruption, making sure that the people's needs are being met, making sure you don't have corrupt individuals in the top, right? Whereas Western democracy, anybody can run, and and anyone can buy ads, and anybody can win a popularity contest if you have enough money to broadcast enough. ads and marketing into enough eyeballs, right? So it's just a horrible system. Also, the plutocracy already anyway. So obviously before we even get to civil war, the U.S. is already a complete not democracy, even by the Ash Institute that said 99.5+% of all U.S. policy, all the U.S. government does is dictated by money, not by votes. So there's no democracy to begin with. It's always been authoritarian, not just the U.S., all of Europe and all of Greece and Rome and all the Western legacy. So, but the Civil War, you could have a plutocracy like the United States, but not be in civil war, right? In the Civil War, the parts of the country completely contesting the legitimacy of the other sections, right? Like the 50% of the United States that believe that Joe Biden is not president, right? Whether they understand what they live in or not, right? The legitimacy of the U.S. government has been in question at least for the last four years, at least that. Arguably longer, right? It's like, where exactly, right? How many American, like if one person in America of a 330 million people, or 340 million, if one person in America says, I don't believe Joe Biden is president, right? Well, that's, you're just that one tinfoil hat. You're just that one weird uncle, take a nap and stop putting, goat piss in your eye. Stop drinking Windex. And hey, uncle, don't eat raw, uncooked bull testicles. Okay? That's weird. Also unsanitary. And the uncle's like, shut up, you damn woke DEI freaking, girly man, or something, And then it's like, okay, well, maybe that's not a civil war if one person, right? Well, what if 100 people say Joe Biden is not president and we're prepared to fight militarily and in full spectrum conflict, we are willing to fight Joe Biden to remove him from office, right? Well, 100 people, that's just a weird faction. That's like Waco, that's like a right-wing militias in Oregon or something. Okay, what if 10,000 people say Joe Biden is not president, right? What if 10,000 people say, you know what? We are the first platoon. We're Caesar's Legion, like for Fallout New Vegas. I was just like reading about that earlier. We are Caesar's Legion, and pizza. We all eat Little Caesar's pizzas, and we are Roman fanboys because we went to Western antiquities or class or the New York Times liberals reciting Herodotus and Aristotle, classical education, and then we read about the conquest of Caesar and the so-called Pax Romana, and we have established. But then we left New York and we moved to Texas, and we established the Sons of Freedom or whatever, and let's say 100,000 of us. We are prepared to attack the United States Capitol and take back America from these tyrannical un-American Democrats and liberals. Is that a civil war? If they say they will, but they don't do it, is that a civil war? I mean, maybe arguably not quite. If the if multiple branches of the United States government have sympathizers with U.S. With right wingers, with separatist American right wingers, if the Army, the Marines, the Air Force, and the Navy are infiltrated by right wing by U.S. insurrectionists, right, and the former president, also says attack the Capitol, right, and maybe not attack, but even if the attack fails, and then the president says, U.S. military, support me in taking over the country. Is that a success? I mean, another example is in 2019, the United States overthrew the indigenous socialists and who had the popular vote, by the way, Evo Morales, and installed a far right murderous dictatorship that massacred dozens of indigenous people. That was an alt-right massacre to put down the anti-Janine Áñez at the behest of Elon Musk, by the way, who said, I want Bolivia's lithium, so we're going to overthrow that country and instate a coup. So, but after that event happened, there was a murder of dozens and dozens of indigenous people. Imagine the U.S. military coming out in the street during the Black Lives Matter protest, right? Imagine the NYPD or imagine the U.S. National Guard murdering college students at Columbia right now. Think about the Columbia Palestine protest. Imagine that the Israelis get what they want and the U.S. empire gets what it wants, and the U.S. police come out to Columbia and they start shooting at the students. Like not shooting with rubber bullets. They just start shooting them with AK-4. Imagine the U.S. military shoots at students with AR-15s. Like at Kent State, there was a college massacre, or they not a massacre, but they did shoot at students with live ammunition. Imagine the U.S. military starts shooting at the students, right? That was what Donald Trump wanted to happen in 2020, but it didn't quite happen. The United States almost collapsed in 2020. It's easy. Arguably, in 31 million people, it's the biggest uprising ever in the United States. China is amazingly stable comparative. Like U.S. always saying they're going to collapse or they're going to fall apart. There is nothing even close to the Black Lives Matter actions and several other actions, even Occupy, right? And there was like 1,000 times smaller, right? And the lockdown rallies a couple of years ago in China, or the last year, or a year or two ago. And a lot of that was the U.S. was interfering in their internal affairs to make that even happen. And the Chinese government responded, and it ended in less than 2 weeks. And the number of people was like less than 10,000, right? The United States had 31 million people in the street, right, for Black Lives Matter. In case you forgot, the United States is a complete basket case failed state. Completely unstable. The United States almost died in 2020, right? There was 31 million. That was 10% of the population was in the street for a year almost. It was like 6 months at least, because of the murder of an innocent black person among so many, right? So the United States almost collapsed into a civil war in this time, right? This was part of the upset of the oppressed people, like the same way Americans are upset about the oppression of the Palestinians by their own racist colonialist government and system. And similarly, the U.S. government, that was what did the police murder, because cops work for the U.S. government, and also a racist system of white supremacy. Similar to the Palestine protests, the Black Lives Matter protests was an act of resistance against the government. It was an act of demand. It was an act of a collective mass act of uprising against the government that lasted a long time. It took so much energy, far more than anything that has ever been against anything that's ever been expressed. The U.S. likes to take pictures of Mr. Tankman and Tiananmen Square, but the reality is, like, that guy, number one, was not run over, and those people were like causing huge ruckus, and also they're funded and operated by Western imperialists, so they can get some photo ops to make China look unstable and like China is authoritarian. When the United States is constantly killing Americans, they just killed a whistleblower at Boeing, and he was a white man. Right? It's like there's like nothing like the authoritarian regime of America exists in China. This is the sad reality. It's just a better government than you. The system is just better than yours. It's just more humane. It's just more. Even Yanis Varoufakis is a Greek former finance minister who knows that. You know, he's a European. It's kind of even worse in many ways than being American. It's like being OG unhealed person. Like, I'm talking about OG, like where Aristotle, the racist, sexist, women should all be enslaved in the kitchen, and black and brown people should all be slaves. Greece is what originated a lot of that sick system of colonialism and racism and capitalism. They had wealthy grape eating. They had Afro-Asiatics serving the Aristotle his grapes on a platter, while he had them whipped, and then he had a sex slave in the kitchen. Right, that was the Greek system. That's the American system. So, and even Giannis would be like, hey, the Chinese, they build roads, they give things away, and they don't start wars, and they help with non-debt trap loans, and they don't have no problems, but they not have the level of uprising internally. They don't have the level of suppression. They don't have the Chinese police isn't the third largest military in the world. Also, that's another thing, and they're way more stable. And the United States and the West have always been the real authoritarian regimes. It's the paradox is the places that call themselves the most free tend to be the most unfree. Not just tend, they literally are, right? And the Black Lives Matter was the evidence of this, right? The Black Lives Matter is the evidence of this. The Palestinian Lives Matter is the new evidence of this. You have so many. I don't know the exact number, but it's like, millions of people are out in the street all over across the world, across the Western world, where you're doing the genocide. In the Arab world, it's also happening because of complicit Arabs with the United States and the Europeans, or the U.S. leading the Europeans to all and the wealthy, corrupt Arab governments to go with the United States. And there's millions of people out on the street to stop this genocide that is also based on racism. And there's no response at all to it, right? So, well, there's no action, there's no material, concrete change of the government's policies to the demands of the population, right? And so anyway, so what that means is that the U.S. is and so I was going back to Bolivia. So in Bolivia in 2019, when the U.S. backed the overthrow of the democratically elected socialist leader Evo Morales under the MAS, Movement to Socialism Party, indigenous, environmental, and socialist-led movement, they resisted, but then it came to military resistance because the U.S. backed far-right forces took over the far-right army forces, sided with the fascist coup government for Elon, who wanted to take the lithium out of Bolivia for his Teslas. And then the Air Force and a larger section of the Bolivian military sided with Evo Morales. And there was a point where they sided with the socialist anti-US groups, anti-imperialist group. And so then there was a point where they were trying to get Evo on a plane. The fascists backed by US were trying to get Evo on a plane. I'm sorry. The left was trying to get Evo on a plane to Mexico to get him out of the country, and the fascists were trying to take him prisoner. The coup government and the Air Force general called while the plane was being held, and the Air Force general that sided with the left. This was the civil war in Bolivia, right? And he said, if you don't let Evo Morales take off from that tarmac, we will firebomb Cochabamba. We will burn your cities. We will start the civil war, and you will lose. You and your fascist government will be destroyed by the socialists, by us. So we will kill you first. We will kill you, the collaborators with the United States, which is obviously anti-democratic and imperialist and has no moral legitimacy whatsoever, no morals. We will bomb you, Janine Áñez, personally. We will destroy your military forces, and then we will forcefully install socialism and anti-imperial multipolarity in Bolivia. That's basically what they said. And so that was the negotiation. And then what happened was the US backed fascists said, oh shit, and they let him go. 2 years later, Janine Áñez was removed from power by an 85% participation general strike that shut the entire economy down. The fascist US-backed Áñez regime collapsed, right? And then so there was a military threat, and then there was also an economic action that was all based upon it. There's a whole diversity of things that have happened there. But long story short, so that's a more progressive, actually democratic country, Bolivia, that as rooted out is corruption that the United States was infesting it with, the capitalist, colonialist mentalities and the fascist elements, right? But there was also there was a split in the legitimacy. What I'm saying is that where this directly pertains is that was a civil war in the sense it was a split between who was the president of Bolivia, right? 60% of the country believed it was Evo Morales, right? And then 40%, and really it was a minority, but it was 40% said it was Áñez. She lost the election, but the United States sent money and weapons, right? Like it does to Israel. It sent money and weapons to the fascists in Bolivia, right? And, she held up a like a 3-foot tall Bible and said, we will send the indios, they use derogatory terms for native people, right? Because Bolivia is 60% indigenous. This is a very important factor there. And she held up a Bible when she was campaigning. She said, we will send these filthy indigenous savages back into the jungle from whence they came, because the indigenous people under the socialist leadership, also with the support of China, by the way, who gave them a free $1 billion satellite so that they could all rapidly become highly connected and educated through their phones. This is one of the techniques. When you build the Belt and Road Initiative, people suddenly get very smart and they have the capability to become educated faster, and you leapfrog the Western-controlled computer, laptop, internet. That's one of many things, but evils. Because the colonizer class, the white capitalist class that was the minority in this country, which controlled the cities more. It's kind of the opposite of the United States, where the cities are filled with more diverse, more ethnic oppressed minorities, right? Black and brown, and Asians, and etc. are in the cities in the United States. Like you think of San Francisco and New York, etc., of having more diversity, right? Less mono white culture there. In Bolivia, it was different. It was more white people in the cities, and then the indigenous out in the non-white in the jungles and in the forests and in rural areas and outside, right? So when they came into the cities, as they got educated and they got better jobs, they became engineers, they became scientists, they all moved in the cities. So she campaigned, she said, we're going to kick all of these Indians back out into the jungle so they can all go throw spears at each other. That's basically what she said. And we're going to use the Christian Bible to kick them out. And we're gonna bring Christianity to this country again, right? The U.S. gave her money and a ton of guns. And anyway, long story short, when that happened, the United States, the U.S. government backed the fascists, and they murdered all these native people, native socialists, just like they did in Vietnam. Is murder the indigenous native communists. That's what the West stands for: is the death of the world and evil. When they came to the country, the who was president split in half, right? Who is legitimate? Now, importantly, that was a civil war of sorts, right? It was a deep crisis of the legitimacy of there was a disagreement of who was in charge in that time. It was a failed state. There was direct shooting. There was military near threats of total war, right? It would have been an all-out war if the indigenous socialist faction bombed the U.S.-backed right-wing city, right? If they actually military directly attacked them, that would be a more intense civil war. But it's the same thing. In one sense, that is what happened to the United States, right? And in the United States, like what in the coup in 2020, in a not very successful coup, but one nonetheless, there has basically been a lack of legitimacy of the entire U.S. government, and it hasn't resulted in the level of what's different because the United States, when the U.S. goes into a smaller country and then pushes the pro-capitalist, imperialist, racist system into their country, that it's a different thing. And the U.S. is a hyperpower. It is a planetary superpower, or a collapsing one. But so there isn't anyone above the United States. There's no and the U.S. is like, the political reality is much more different. It's much more sick and toxic and confused as well. And it's a bigger place, right? And it's a bigger place economically, it's a bigger place militarily, and it's a bigger place population wise and geographically. So it's much more sprawling, and it's much more chaotic, right? And the United States also, in one sense, it is the world's planetary elite, right? That's who really ultimately makes decisions. It's all Saudi billionaires, European billionaires, Taiwanese billionaires who pretend like they're not part of China, Hong Kong billionaires, Indian billionaires and millionaires and wannabes, right? They all come to the United States. So it's and so each of them are like, it's a planetary imperial nexus of the world's capitalist imperialists, and not all of them all agree about what exactly they want. But what they know is they can try to leverage the United States empire militarily, financially, soft power, tech, etc., in order to get what they want. So they're all fighting over control, right? In one sense, that's really how all the empires have kind of been, but especially in the hyper-connected 21st century, it's a little bit different than the London has transnational, or international billionaires influencing itself now. It had them in the past, but in the 21st century, where the whole planet is so interconnected with the internet, etc., that it's and people can travel very quickly via airplane and jet. It changes the nature and the resolution, it changes the signal to noise ratio of Americanness and what exactly the American empire is, in the way that a place like Rome, pre-telephone, pre-jet, the fastest thing, a horse, right, is a horse. It changes that reality. The power is much more centralized to people that specifically live and mostly work and operate out of Rome, right? Whereas modern empires, imperialism is basically, I can get on a jet, go on vacation, and make a cell phone call and move $6 billion from Afghanistan into a Cayman bank account that also is interconnected with my DC buddies and my Wall Street buddies, right? And then I can go to Tokyo tomorrow, and in 8 hours I'll be back. So that's another discussion that's beyond the scope of this video. But I mean, that doesn't stop the fact that there is a U.S. empire there. And so some of the very American Republicans are saying, I like being a wealthy capitalist, racist, colonialist American Republican. But more Tucker Carlson, some of the, not Tucker Carlson specifically, but some of the people that are like around him. But I also care about America. I like being an American, white American. I don't want Indians. I don't want rich Indians from India in my DC. It's kind of like Agnes, right? Like, I don't want in the same Agnes, I don't want indigenous Indians I don't want Quechua, Guarani, and Aymara from the mountains in the Altiplano, where all the lithium happens to be, coming in as getting engineering degrees and political science degrees. I have my prestigious Harvard degree, and they got a Tsinghua, engineering, nanotech degree, and now they're in my city. I don't want Indians in my city, right? So some of the conservatives saying, I don't want Indians in my city. I don't want Chinese. I don't want the boba, trader capitalists that fled the Beijing Revolution. I don't want those Chinese rich people in my city. I don't want Europe. I don't want I don't want African. I don't want an Egyptian puppet. Upper cruster in my city. I only want white people in my upper crust rich America. And that's part of the Republican Party that are like, we gotta, and that's why they more tend to go, we need to fight China, not Russia. Sometimes we need to fight China, not Russia, because some of them understand that, they understand that China is the real economic countervailing force in that sense. But a lot of them are just like, I don't like Asians. I want America to be white, right? And the liberals are like, America, why does it have to be white? We could make more money because most of the world isn't white. Not that they care about non-white people, but I would rather have more money, and then we can have some tacos, and we'll have some salsa, and we'll have some couscous, and we'll have some black and brown people. Also, if we have more black and brown people in here, then we can have more servants, so we'll have more Filipinos. Thing is, Republicans and Democrats, they all want illegal. They all want they want immigrants of some type doing all the actual essential labor. One of them just tries to win over white voters by saying we're going to kick them out. But they're not going to kick them out because they can't, because most of the populations in the United States that are white, unfortunately, are not doing essential labor for whatever reason. They should do essential labor, but they don't want to. So anyway, that doesn't really solve any of these problems. I'm just kind of spitballing in a lot of directions, but that's a lot of that. There's not like, this is the Trump voter, this is the Trump voter and this is the Biden voter. There's a confluence of different ideologies, interests, and feelings and peoples that are congealing there. And going back to the point about whether it constitutes a civil war. So arguably, we're already in a civil war, right? We already have crisis of legitimacy. It's not shooting. Well, the thing is, there is shooting happening, right? It's slow, it's low scale, but there hasn't been like any formal land seized, or there's not like outright military confrontation on the scale of something like, I don't know, on the scale of some South American countries has had, or on the scale of something in the Middle East or North Africa. So it's not at that level, but in the sense that the United States doesn't have legitimacy, right? That's absolutely true. Is it in the sense of a cold civil war? It's definitely a cold civil war. The United States doesn't have. The U.S. doesn't have. It doesn't have. It does not have some people call it not the mandate of heaven, but it's like jokingly referred to by some of my Asian friends as the United States president has lost the mandate of heaven. It's like the mandate of the people, the will of the people, the feeling of the people that this is a legitimate government is not there for the United States government. The United States government maintains. This is why they invest all the money in the police and invest all the money in suppression. They're trying to ban TikTok. The United States government maintains what remains of a semblance of control that it has with violence, gaslighting, disinformation, and threats, and economic violence, and making it impossible for you to afford your house and your car and everything else, unless you just keep going to work for their horrible corporations that and just living under the totalitarianism of Western fake democracy that's really plutocracy, right? So that's where the United States is. It's so that sense, in that sense, like it's not shooting, it's not in the middle of actual. It's not like Texas Texas militias are shooting at, New Mexico's forces, or the Western California, Oregon, Washington, Air Force is bombing Wyoming, and Michigan are shooting, mortars back. Like, that's not happening. And like, that's probably not how that would happen. Like, arguably the Texas border conflict, right? The Texas border, you have multiple National Guards down there, right? At the Texas border. I mean, I don't know where it is right now, but there was U.S. military, and then there were Texas, paramilitary. Well, they had guns, right? And they were militarily trained. There were multiple separate divisions of the U.S. military standing off against each other at the Texas border recently, right? And some people say, well, that's for show. And Republican governors, like half of the United States, sent National Guard into Texas. They sent, so that was another one where there was U.S. military forces were sent from half of the United States, and the U.S. federal government and Democrats sent their own military forces to stand off against them. Nobody shot, but again, that's like Bolivia, but nobody actually fired a shot. But the military threat and the increasing intensity of the aggression between intra-U.S. factions was there. If somebody from the Texas side had fired, or if somebody from the U.S. federal government had fired at the Texas side, let's say somebody did a little too much alcohol the night before, got some COVID brain damage, just lost it, and just started shooting at the other side. That could have been the U.S. Civil War already. You could already be in it. All it takes is just somebody, maybe one or a few people do the wrong thing at the wrong time. How stable is America? Like, how stable is America right now? Are people like really feeling in their right mind? Are people feeling really mentally well right now? How are people doing? Yeah, I that's why I say it's like actually very highly probable the United States will be in a civil, not necessarily the whole country shooting at each other, but some kind of smaller scale skirmish break out somewhere, and then that gets leveraged by grifters to a bigger scale skirmish, right? Everybody, Fox News has said we don't mind a civil war. Could be nice, could be good for profits, right? Most of our constituents want one, or at least they say they want one. So, and so that's where that's where is it a movie or is it real life? It's hard to say. It's hard to really say. Like whether it absolutely is or not is kind of in some ways that's semantics. Um, but it is it's something that people shouldn't spend all day thinking about it and like prepare. I don't think you should. Like what did that article say? What did that article say? Where is that article? Yeah. What would happen if the Civil War broke out? I don't think that you should. I don't. Various paramilitary groups and research groups, both those that know as well as those that are secret, come out, take over local, regional pieces of territory, and assert themselves as medieval lords, propped by any advanced military hardware that they may possess. I mean, like that is a possibility. That is a possibility. This is things like that have happened. Maybe not at the scale, like Waco, Texas. I mean, there's been many compounds of people calling themselves, resisting the U.S. tyrannical government, people that have been like some kind of secessionists of some kind. That has happened multiple times. Some of these have wound up in people dying, sometimes like tens of people dying. None of them have been like 1,000 people were all killed in an actual battle of a significant scale. But there have been many attempts by Americans to do something extreme, and then this winds up in police or sometimes military interventions, National Guard interventions. In a civil war scenario, civilians must, and then and so I don't know about getting a ton of plywood. You should always have a mask. Why? Because you have ongoing pandemic, and you live in a mass surveillance, collapsing imperial fascist authoritarian regime. So with the CIA and the police constantly trying to surveil you. For trying to defend Palestinian lives and stop genocide. So you should definitely have a mask either way. I wear protection gloves, but I don't know that gloves, eyewear and protection, masks, sturdy shoes, plywood on your windows, sand and soil on your walls to reduce blast fragmentation. I don't know if that's gonna really help you in a civil war all that much. Minimize mobile signals in areas of military presence to avoid targeting. Blockage of water access. I mean, you should expect blockage of water. Everyone's going through rolling blackouts now because the United States is collapsing and they're trying to squeeze all the money out of all of their electrical customers, right? Water is already blocked to a lot of people. Here in Hawaii, the U.S. is just dumping jet fuel in the water and then PFAS. So, I mean... But everywhere in the United States, the water is falling apart. Water system's falling apart. The electrical system's falling apart. The healthcare is already collapsed. There is no public health. If you go to a hospital, you have 1 out of 10 chance of dying from a hospital caught COVID, RSV, or flu infection. But it could be worse. So your healthcare system is already in shambles. If a civil war to break out, you just get a first aid kit and get a nurse's manual. That's basically because you ain't gonna have any healthcare. It ain't gonna be. If you show up to a hospital, you have a 50-50 chance. If you show up to a hospital, you have a 50-50 chance that the nurse that's gonna be serving you is gonna say, "I don't serve the wrong Americans." Right? That part was like one part of that movie there's one clip where there's this guy, in A24 Civil War, where there's this guy. He stops the journalist played by Kirsten Dunst, right? And he says, they say, "Hey, there's been a misunderstanding. We're Americans." And he says, "Okay, what kind of Americans are you?" Right? What kind of Americans are you? The U.S. is already, in that sense, the U.S. is already in a civil war, right? Because whenever you're in a public space, some of it is masking versus not masking, and some of that is right-winger, not all of it. Some of it's liberal and right-winger against people who believe in basic rationality, science, and community care. But the ability to just be in a public space, a nurse's office, doctor office, hospital, classroom, restaurant. What are you even doing in a restaurant? But schools, the public spaces are already extremely divided and increasingly violent spaces, right? People, what kind of person are you? Are you a masker? Or are you not a masker? Because if you are wearing a mask, you're one of those. You're one of those people. The vaccine was one. You're one of the vaxxers. You're one of those Bill Gates microchip back. So in that sense, like, this is true. I mean, it's not like people with assault rifles aren't going are you? Do you believe Donald Trump is the current president of the United States, right? And then they shoot you if you say no. It's not at that level, but it is like there is a huge divides that are they're violent divides in the U.S. along a whole several different lines, and that in that sense there is also already a civil war. And so like when the guy asks like, hey, what kind of Americans are you, right? Some people say I'm not even American, right? A lot of them people are saying I'm not even American. Half of the United States is ready to burn their own flag, and they literally are doing that. They're like I somehow have wound up in a position where I'm paying taxes to America. I have to have American IDs and stuff. I got to go to the American government offices and all these things. But I don't identify as an American because this country's horrible. I know it's true history, and I can't stand what it's doing in my name. I renounce my. You can't to renounce American citizenship is actually very, very difficult and very expensive. Like formally, legally, according to the U.S. But people will say like I don't want to be seen as an American because of all these horrible things that America is and is doing, right? And so that's another split in the United States. Anyways, so but all those things, what all of that means is that there is a lot of questions there. I didn't answer any questions. I just raised a lot of them. I'm not reviewing the movie, obviously. I'm just using that as a jumping off point. So I can't really say how good or not good it is, especially given the fact that I haven't seen it. But anyways, but yeah, I don't. To be clear, I don't like want people to die in a civil war. I don't like hope that everybody gets shot in the civil war. I don't think that I don't think that it will be a full scale, just everyone against everyone, shooting at everyone in the sense of like the 1860s. That's probably unlikely. Hard to say. I don't think, unlike the 1860s, I don't think anyone really believes. I think there was more faith in America, certainly amongst white people, in the 1800s than there is faith in America, even amongst white people. But white people are a smaller percentage of the population than they were, right? In the 18, they're a smaller percentage of the citizens than they were in the mid 1800s. I don't think the faith in America now is anywhere near what it was in the 1800s. Whether you were for the Confederates or the Union under Abraham Lincoln or, Robert E. Lee, and in the American South, you believed in your version of America. But today, most Americans don't even believe in any version of America, right? Like a lot of them are like, this country sucks. I don't really feel very much when I look at that flag. I mostly kind of feel I just feel generally neglected, and a sense of almost like so this is why there's a lot of especially on the white population, there's a lot of like anarchistic in the sense of like being against all governments generally, anarchistic sentiment, which includes, I believe, Aaron Bushnell, who self-immolated for Palestine. He was one of those, and so that is different from the 1800s, and so that also it's a different technological, political, and economic reality than that time. So I don't think that that's necessarily going to be super likely. Although there's a lot of people that there's a lot of people who do want to have a fight of some kind. There's a lot of people who are ready to have a military conflict of some kind. There is ongoing daily killing by police and all kind of other entities in the United States. So the U.S. is already very, very violent. People are already dying in the United States. Obviously, they're dying outside the United States in U.S.-backed wars. So it's really hard to say, but I hope that the more people that at least understand that that's the situation, and the more people that get educated and organized, if you are somebody who wants to not have racism and have horrible catastrophic, minorities of rich people controlling everything and taking all your resources and then leaving you with nothing and not being able to afford your rent and living in a tent, right? And suffering and dying from all these things, right? If, then um, preparing for the eventualities of some kinds of a spectrum of civil wars is probably a good idea. I mean, it's okay. I don't know about the plyboard your window, but knowing how to use some weapons, knowing how to grow food, knowing how to get clean water, hygiene, like sanitation, basic things like that. Deal with pandemic. Pandemic's gonna get worse when the healthcare system completely collapses. Whatever diseases are there, whatever regulatory systems keep diseases out of your food and your water and help deal with outbreaks. It's having a mask and many masks would be a good way to prepare for civil war. I mean, and also when the tear gas starts flying and the mustard gas and the chemical weapons, right? I mean, as far as I know, if somebody does a chemtrail and the chemtrails is like a whole thing that's like the chemtrails have been banned in some U.S. states. If somebody drops anthrax or COVID-19, which are both U.S. created bioweapons, I'm just kidding. I don't have receipts for all of that, but highly probable. If an airplane flies over and drops huge clouds of chemical or biological agents, most high level N95s at least will keep out the minimize the likelihood of you catching the virus or the chemical. Well, I can't say about all the chemicals, but certainly the viruses that you can catch. You have a far lower probability of being aerosolized, having the Texas secessionists aerosolize your entire state with airborne super COVID. You have a low chance of getting, or airborne. If they reverse engineer the birds to fly some kind of super COVID fused with H5N1 plus Ebola in with a furin cleavage site spike protein that has a 60% kill rate, and if America 3, right, drops that on your state because you're in a civil war, having a mask can only help in that situation because they're proven to prevent N95s, even tightly sealed 3-layer surgical masks, if they are properly sealed and you don't have gaps around the sides of the face and the nose, they actually do reduce the infection rate in event of biological civil warfare. So just some pro tips. Anyways, that's the end of the stream. And obviously, full disclosure, I am a native Hawaiian under U.S. illegal occupation by the U.S. colonial capitalist occupation. So, I may be slightly biased in what I say, towards, if you want to learn more about that, you can find out from the Silver Spook threads on Twitter by following @SilverSpook_Guy, where I talk about the U.S. ban on Hawaiian language, overthrowing of our country, letting us die in Maui fires, devastating our universal healthcare, illegally occupying Hawaii to this day. My mother's hands were broken for speaking Hawaiian in school. And the U.S. is not a beacon, but a destroyer of independence, sadly. And you can learn more about that in these threads by following @SilverSpook_Guy. You can also follow ko-fi.com/silverspook, or you can help us with a one-time donation through ko-fi.com/silverspook. And every bit does go a long way to help us get the support that we need to keep on doing the videos and finishing games like Neofeud 2, an anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, anti-racist cyberpunk game. And at patreon.com/Neofeud, you can also get access when you become a patron to the Discord, Silverspook Discord, behind the scenes of what we're working on. Speaking of surviving civil wars, we are well on our way to doing that with the Silverspook Cooperative. We grow enough to have potatoes every single day of the year. We have so many potatoes. Some potatoes are like rotting in the ground. I dig them up and they're already rotten because that's how many potatoes we have here. So we are prepared for the Civil War, even though it's not going to happen here because Hawaii is not part of the United States under the United Nations formal High Commissioner on Human Rights. So Also, we have sweet potatoes, and we are growing coconuts and sugar and dogs. Well, we don't eat the dogs. The dogs just bring joy to our lives, and various other things. And you can see all that plus all the progress on Neofeud 2, the cyberpunk Silver Spook adventure game, which here and other things that we're working on. When you become a Silver Spook Patreon patron, and also you can follow Silver Spook, or you can get the access to Silver Spook University. Silver Spook University is Indigenous life education combining decolonized history, current struggles, imagined futures, cultural analysis from a Native Hawaiian activist, educator, science fiction writer. So all the things that what you need to know, what you need to teach children, what people should know today, in all those important topics when you have Western lies about past, present, and future, permeating formal schooling, modern books and media, etc. And so that's this is one answer. This is not the answer. This is just like an answer that we provide to help people with what they need to know in case they're questioning what they need to know, what their children should know on economics, politics, and history in the world that they're not going to get from U.S. Western imperial capitalist places. So that's what that is. And also you can get Neofeud on Steam for which is a cyberpunk adventure game, and this is a game based on my experiences as a Native Hawaiian social worker, STEM teacher, and educator, and where you were a social worker for homeless robots and a delinquent a delinquent 16-year-old ex-con team up with the socialist ex-princess to try to overthrow a floating trillionaires above a increasingly wastelandified Earth. And Neofeud is also a game, if you can leave even a very short review, if you like the game, we really do appreciate it because it does help the game get discovered in the Steam algorithm when people are looking for games to play. Also, I'm supposed to read a review. So here is a recent review of Neofeud in case you did not you're not sure. So this was somebody that said, I cried when I finished Neofeud. Actually, it will be living rent free in my head 24/7, 365. I actively fell in love with music and the art style and the characters and really everything about it. And so anyway, so that's one person. So that's what if Neofeud starts charging rent in your head, let me know, because I'm anti-landlord. You know what I'm saying? And I will have a very firm but respectful discussion with Neofeud and convince it to stop charging you rent. Okay? Because no landlords, no bosses. Anyways, if Neofeud lives in your head, it better be rent free. No rents. Anyways, also you can get Neofeud on itch.io for Windows and Mac and Linux over here. It's also on sale there, and also you can get other games such as Decolonators. Speaking of civil war, this is a war where you kick out the colonizers and capitalists. It's not a civil war. This is a revolutionary war to end the capitalist colonial system in Vietnam that I made a game about with our fellow Vietnamese friends, Luna Oi. Also, Indigistar is a game that you can get from that is also from a Native Hawaiian perspective. It's an indigenous 2001: A Space Odyssey. This is an indigenous Dune. Okay, this is actually Dune, but good, actually good. Okay, anyway, not the same level of production value because I made it myself. Also, Pigeon with Gun is a game where you play a pigeon with a gun shooting at gajillionaires in a cyberpunk future where crimes and giant mega corporations are doing bad stuff. And it's also Woman, which is a book by Holly, who was raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity, and this is a book that dunks on that stuff. Speaking of right-wingers, I know I had the Fox News page up for a bit and a bunch of Trump supporters on my screen. I'm not a supporter of those people, to be clear. I'm just trying to describe the reality. And Holly critiques that in this book. Also, you can follow at Silverspook Games at Mastodon.social or at Silverspook Games at Octodon.social on the Silverspook at the Silverspook Mastodon sites. You can also follow Silverspook Guy, like I already said, and Silverspook Games for the games related stuff. And you can also follow on Instagram, Facebook, and all these other places, many other places. Terminus C or Terminus Cyberstar is a cyberpunk RPG that I'm the content director and lead writer of. It's a game that is being worked on by a handful of other folks, and it's also a game that is nearing completion as far as I understand. And yeah, don't forget you can check that out. And Holly, you can follow at Tech Fairy. Holly is also, of course, Silverspook partner, wife in the games as well as in marriage, and also producer and more with the Kate Nix music and variety show, writer, educator, sapphic queer person with MECFS and mask wearer because of that, and also because, well, it's a good thing to do. Parent and caregiver to 2 native Hawaiian children, and also, of course, Holly is always doing a great job moderating here. Thank you to all the people on this list for your continued support. Without your support, it does become very difficult for us to keep on doing this work. And so we thank you very much from the bottom of our heart for helping us keep on going. And also, one more thing, I just real quick shout out. Thanks again to Carl Jha, who was on the Silver Spook channel the other day. Thanks a lot to Carl. Carl Jha is an educator, historian, a podcaster, and professional Twitter shit poster. That's his words. And Carl was here with myself discussing Asian and Pacific Islanders, discussing anti-imperialism, and talking about the Fallout TV show as well. So this is an Asian and myself, a Pacific Islander, talking about these important topics. And thanks again to Carl. And if you missed that did come out. I released it. I did a Twitch stream, and then I released a video of that to YouTube yesterday. So you can also catch up on that after this stream. And that's it. Thanks. Until next time, keep your shape polished, be excellent to each other, and have a good time. Don't worry, the Civil War, I'm just joking about all that stuff. There's not going to be any Civil War. It's totally fine. But, you might want to, just, get some, get some N95s, get some, make sure you know where the water and the food's coming from.